Welcome back, and it's still Newsweek, where we highlight the biggest stories that made the headlines in the week. Now, 6 months after terrorists kidnapped scores of people after attacking a train, the last batch of 23 hostages has been released. At least 8 people died in the attack, while 168 people were declared missing after the attack on the Kaduna-bound train on March 28. Details in this report.
The 3 remaining AK-9 train passengers held hostage by terrorists have regained their freedom more than 6 months after their kidnap. The secretary of the Chief of Defense Staff Action Committee, Usman Yusuf, said they were freed at about 4 p.m. on Wednesday. According to him, a 7-man presidential committee assembled by the Chief of Defense Staff, General Lucky Irabo, have taken custody of all of them. 28th of March 2022 is a day over 300 passengers on board the AK-9 Kaduna-bound train will never forget soon. They were ambushed by terrorists suspected to be members of the Ansar and Boko Haram insurgents. Survivors say lights in the AK-9 train went off, and what followed was the sound of gunshots everywhere. Government officials later confirmed that 8 people died, 26 others were injured, while over 60 passengers were feared kidnapped. Senior government and security officials immediately visited the scene of the attack, making promises of efforts to rescue kidnapped persons. Train services along the Kaduna-Abuja route were immediately suspended by the NRC. But while families of the slain victims mourned their losses, those of injured persons were in hospitals, watching over their loved ones with severe injuries. A group of others were left absolutely lost and confused, those whose relatives were kidnapped. Series of protests were held in Kaduna and Abuja, demanding for the release of those kidnapped and the sack of the transport minister. Series of videos were also released by the terrorists, who were seen to be torturing hostages in a bid to get ransom from their relatives and the attention of the government. The terrorists had also demanded for a hostage swap with their children and cohorts who they claim were in government's custody. It's unclear if that was done, but the first batch of 11 hostages were immediately freed shortly after. Some relatives of freed victims say they paid up to 100 million naira as ransom before their loved ones regained freedom. Mahmoud, the media aide to Sheikh Gumi, played a vital role in the release of several others. He was in September arrested by the DSS in Cairo and repatriated back to Nigeria for questioning. The military have recently intensified operations against terrorists in Kaduna and other northwest states, destroying several camps. The presidency has also promised an end to insecurity before the end of their administration. It remains to be seen how this will be done. Lupe Asson, TVC News, Kaduna.
Well, joining me in the studio, I have political analyst Mayowa Oladiji. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me, Jacinta.
All right. Good evening. We thank God for the release of the remaining 23 hostage. But, however, people want to know what will happen to the perpetrators of this crime.
Okay, so if you look at the precedents since for the past 2 months now, you can see that the troops have ramped up the offensive against the terrorists. Unlike before, whereby you just, every other day, you're always hearing news of attacks, and although there are still isolated pockets of attacks here and there, but there's been new grounds gained. And if you check on the news, because I'm a reporter, as I said earlier, our troops, they lose their lives daily. They try our best. So the media, the onus is on us to always try and be neutral. Even though we know the government can do enough, Nigerians still don't have the confidence in the government due to all that has been happening. I mean, it's very heartbreaking, 6 months in the dungeons of the terrorists. So I feel what Nigerians should just do is try to hold their leaders accountable. It starts from the grassroots, hold your leaders accountable. And I think the federal government, there's this talk about state policing. Nigeria is a very complex country to govern. Even if you have the best of intentions, definitely there's no president that will be there that will want the country to implode. So, but there's this need for us to look at holistic ways of tackling insecurity in the country. And this is in coalition with the state governors, we have the local governments, for us to be able to root out crime, nip it at its bud, instead of when everything happens. And the government, they have not been proactive enough. They're always reactive. You see, anytime something happens, There's always these condolence messages. I mean, Nigerians are tired of it, but the owners want us to be neutral too, because nobody wants the country to go up in flames. And as the report said, Taku Mamu has been arrested by the DSS. There are investigations going on, and I believe the perpetrators will be arrested. They will be nabbed. I believe that.
All right, like you mentioned earlier while you were speaking, you said Nigerians don't have confidence in the government. But, you know, with the train service set to resume, do you think Nigeria will still have enough confidence to, you know, power through that trail service?
It's not a matter of confidence, more of a matter of lack of choice. I mean, we all know some weeks back, criminals attacked Long Bridge. That has not stopped Lagosians from using Long Bridge. So that even I have my younger sister lives in Abuja. She goes on assignments. People traipse to Kaduna, Abuja every other day. You see people, even despite the fact that that place is an odd zone. What I think the federal government should do is just to, as you said, surveillance. And in the last, in the 2022 budget, the Minister of Transportation, Muazu Sambo, said the federal government in the 2022 budget earmarked 71 trillion naira for the installation of acoustic sensing security surveillance system. I think that's the step in the right direction if there's accountability. We all know how the system works with lack of accountability. And that's why most of Nigerians, there's this distrust between the citizenry and the leaders. So if such step, the sensing system, for example, can be enacted, can be built, I think that will go a long way into inspiring confidence in the citizens for us to use it. Because, I mean, billions of naira are sunk into building infrastructure. It has to be used to cascade into a good economy. So, I think.
All right. So. How do you think the government and the security can guard against a repeat of this ugly incident?
As I reiterated earlier, policing at the local level, bottom-top system, not top-bottom. I mean, how many million? Let's say we have 150 million people. The president is too, I don't want to use the word disconnected from the ground. So that's why we have leaders at the local level. They are the ones, we have Amotekun on those states. That's why I feel what the state government should do is that they should petition their lawmakers, their local lawmakers, for them to like codify it into the law. Understand? If Amotekun is codified into the law, we all see Governor Samuel Tom of Benue trying to set up a militia because of the oil crisis in Benue State. We have the local corps in Lagos, Amotekun. We have Ibubuagu in the southeast. If these outfits can be codified, it will go a long way. And there has to be like a committee, maybe like a panel. The state governors will be there. Maybe the police will have a representative. Then the president will be there. Will be the overall head for them to like supervise these bodies. You understand? So that there will be accountability. There won't be unnecessary wielding of power against the defenseless.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much for your contribution so far. But right now, we will go to our final show, our final story for tonight, where President Muhammadu Buhari says that the federal government has provided 470 billion in the 2023 budget for revitalization and salary enhancement in the tertiary institution. This comes at a time when the Court of Appeal in Abuja has ordered the Academic Staff Union of Universities to call off the strike. Take a listen.
Court granted them a conditional leave to appeal, provided today they must obey the order of the National Industrial Court made on the 21st of September, ordering them to return to classroom. You heard the court considering the interest of students who had been locked out of school and educational infrastructure that had been locked down.
Let the ASU obey the court order. Meanwhile, let the government fulfill its own part to ASU, so that we will not have this issue again. 8 months, and on this note, I would like to call on the Nigerian students to remain calm and prepare themselves as we are going back to class. Let us be law-abiding citizens.
All right, well, so the federal government has projected 470 billion naira for university infrastructure. Do you think that this would in any way appease ASU? It
should. I mean, it's just like in marriage. The husband and wife, whenever they're fighting, the kids, they'll be the cannon fodder. You understand? So I had to make the analogy for the message to sink in. So they have to meet each other halfway. There is no way ASU demands the federal government is going to meet, because we saw what Mr. Tolope said earlier. The country is broke. That's the truth. The country is broke. So they can't meet the 1 billion demands that ASU is asking for. So I think it's a show of good faith for the federal government to like include this 470 billion into the budget for the tertiary institutions, because I read President Muhammadu Buhari's speech is for the tertiary institutions, they owe money. So by my own grasp is just on the part of the federal government, the creation, the registration of 2 other unions. But I think what the federal government did is that ASU, they really played their hand. They were so harsh. They made it drag for too long, so they lose sympathy with the whole populace. So that was why. So now the federal government is trying to force their hand. Okay, we're creating these 2 other unions. What are you going to do? Are you going to accept it or not? That's why they went to court. The court forced ASU. Now go back to class and teach. In the meantime, negotiation will go on the side for, so that students, a year, we can't afford another disruption. And next year is an election year. So all hands has to be on deck for them to redress because it's like a cyclical thing. The first ASU strike out is 1981, because I was searching. And almost every other year there's been strike. That's why our education system is moribund. So I think this is a show of faith, and ASU have to meet the federal government halfway for the whole system to be in order and for students to resume.
All right, let me also have your thought on the idea that the appeal court has ordered ASU to call off its 8-month strike. Yeah. It seems ASU has been boxed into a corner. What do you think?
Definitely. I think even the counsel to ASU, Mr. Femi Falana SCN, I think because I spoke to a couple of legal experts, in secret, we advise ASU to just call off the strike. Pending is a show of good faith. Now, the eyes of Nigerians are on both ASU and the federal government, so they want to see what both parties will do into trying to redress the whole issue. So I think it would be good it would be beneficial for ASU to just call off the strike and return to class while negotiations are ongoing with the federal government.
All right. I was going to ask the final question, but unfortunately, we are out of time. Okay. Thank you very much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jacinta.
All right. Thank you also for being part of the show. And as our show for today, remember you can follow the conversation on our social media platforms at TVC News NG or on our website at tvcnews.tv. I am Jacinta Obiugo. Until next week, it's goodbye.